Welcome to Turn the Page podcast with Alyssa and Leah. This is a podcast where we are going to share our love for children's literature and help create new page turners.
So today we're going to be beginning to answer the question, how can I get my child to read more and inspire my child to love reading?
This is what started it. And then we have already said it's a loaded question. It's not the easiest thing to answer when, as a teacher, when a parent asks. But we have a lot of ideas, and we're just going to kind of start to answer this with our first idea.
Absolutely. Just start kind of diving into what it means to create someone who loves reading. And obviously, I think this is harder now than it was when we were kids because there is so much else to distract kids. And especially with devices, so many kids have their own device. And, I'm a mom. I have a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, and they each have their own Kindle tablet. And I will say it started as a car trip thing, and then it has evolved into something that they're constantly asking for. And that does distract from picking up a book because obviously they'd love to watch Netflix all day if they could.
I'm sure. Me too. So, but the first thing I think we want to say, I say as a teacher, is I want you to go and help your child pick out a book that they want to read. I think that's the most important thing. Throughout school, they are going to read things that they have to read, that they're not going to love to read. So let's not make it harder by doing that at home.
Absolutely. So when I think about most of my experiences as a kid reading, they were things I was reading for school or because I had to read them. Even thinking like about a summer reading list where I had choice, but limited choice. I think that sometimes makes us think our kids don't like to read, but it's because they're reading materials that they don't want to read. And I think that goes into validating any and all materials as a good thing to read. So obviously there's going to be things out of their age range appropriateness. But if they want to read a comic book, a magazine, a cereal box, a trash book,
if they want to read the same book 10 times, that's okay.
That is okay. If they want to read picture books and they're in 5th grade, that's okay. And I think that sometimes is why kids don't like to read, is because we're asking them to read things that they're just not interested in. And maybe it's things we liked as a kid. I recently saw a post on Instagram that someone's child was reading Where the Red Fern Grows. And all these people were commenting on it that it was obviously a great book for them and they loved it. I despised that book. And so when I saw it, I was like, oh gosh, this poor child's about to read this book. And I think that it's okay if you love that book. That's fantastic. But I don't think that that's every kid's cup of tea. And I think finding what your kid's, cup of tea, coffee, lemonade is important. So where would you recommend parents, or how would you recommend parents go about this?
So I usually say go to the library, go to a bookstore, whatever, you feel comfortable with. Even if you're shopping online on Amazon, pull up some choices, let them look through them, and find what is like, ooh, this looks really interesting. Whatever that is, go to different sections and you can help them along. I know you're really interested in space, or I know you're really interested in dinosaurs, or I know you're really sports. There's books for everything, and let them look through the books. Let them look through.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And don't focus so much on the reading level, like you said. Maybe a child is going to pick up a book that you think might be a little bit too hard for them. They can figure that out.
Yes, listen. I once went to this reading PD, and it had a text, and it had all the words were kind of like deleted. And what they were talking about was if you have a background knowledge in something, about how much more you can read on it. So there are 5-year-olds that can read dinosaur names that obviously they can't technically read,
Yeah.
but they know those dinosaur names. And then there's adults that would maybe come across, Velociraptor. That's an obvious one, but that couldn't read it or couldn't decode it. And so I think that is important. If your child is very interested in something, a lot of times they can read outside of their reading level.
Mm-hmm.
And I think even if they're reading below their reading level,
Right.
to help them catch the reading bug, to help them fall in love with reading, let them read that.
Yeah. And that goes with making it enjoyable. So they're not going to fall in love with reading if it's a chore. They're going to fall in love with reading if it's something that entertains them, if it's something that brings them joy. That's where I'm coming from with this. Is like, if we're going to say, I want my child to be a reader, I want them to read more, they have to enjoy it. It can't be a chore for them. And like I said, in school, they are getting that. We're going to read this book and discuss it all week long.
Right.
So it doesn't have to happen at home as well.
Right. And I think that goes into, so when you go to the library or go to Barnes and Nobles, I would recommend a physical bookstore just so they can actually pick up the book and start reading it.
Mm-hmm.
Let them not finish books.
Yeah.
That's hard for me as a teacher to say because we want kids to finish books.
Right. Yeah.
But if I pick up a book and I dislike it,
Yeah.
I am not going to force myself to finish it. I mean, not to compare it to TV, but to compare it to TV. If I watch the pilot of a show and I hate it, I'm not going to watch that show. So I think we need to allow our kids to do this. Allow them to pick up a book, read the first chapter, and walk away.
Yeah. And if you've bought that book, okay, it's not that it's going to waste. It's good. Keep a library so that it's there maybe in a week, in a month when they're like, oh, let me come back to this. That's going to happen too. And even in book club, when we have a book, that's a rule. I'm doing air quotes right now because I'm a stickler for the rules of book club. I hear, even though I don't think I am, but we always talk about how if you might not be super excited about a book that we choose, I ask that you at least try it. And if it's not for you, don't read it. That's going to be awful. So yeah, it's okay.
Like a memoir is not for me. Whenever people recommend memoirs, I'm like, oh gosh. Even if I love the person, I just don't.
Yeah.
I don't love a memoir, and that is okay that I don't like to read that. Just like if I don't want to read, Where the Red Fern Grows, I don't have to. And I think when you were free choice reading, when you're helping a child become a free choice reader, some kids shockingly don't love fiction. I've had a lot of kids that love nonfiction. And as a parent, that would not be my first go-to. I would want to pick up a fictional book for my child because I think that's inherently more interesting personally.
Mm-hmm. We have a lot of kids, though, that choose to read. And honestly, it's because even nonfiction is interesting. Like, Who Would Win books. Like, those are interesting and kids love them. And they're not always appropriate for emerging readers. And my kids love them, my students.
Yes.
So great.
They're a picture book, but they're definitely a higher reading level.
Yeah.
And they have some complex text in there. I love Who Would Win books. That's one of my favorite things to teach. I also think like chapter books, once you get a child, especially like I think a boy, sometimes boys are just reluctant readers. It seems it's hard for them to find something they're into. When they get to chapter books, there's no longer pictures. There's no longer things that are like inherently visually engaging. I think that the illustrated chapter books or the informational like encyclopedia type picture books are great to get them. I have this one that's like Gruesome Guts, I think is the name of it. And my boys love that book because it's visually very engaging, even though it really is an informational read.
Yeah.
So things like that, it can be very helpful, letting your child just experiment with books. And I'm not saying that means you have to buy them all at Barnes & Noble.
No.
I would recommend doing this at your local library.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And usually I know our library has no checkout late fees for kids. So that's really great when you have a mom like me who doesn't make it right back. But also that's great if you're checking out a volume of books. So like if I'm gonna check out 5 books and let my kid kind of try them, that helps because we have some time to sit with those books and see, do they love them? And then once you find a series you love, go ahead and buy the new Dog Man. That's going to be hard to check out.
Yeah.
But if you are searching for what you're into, a public library or your school's library, if you have a librarian that you can kind of talk to, it's also helpful because they have a professional there that is going to know a lot of children's books.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing I think that we can mention is just thinking about, is your child able to see other people read at their home, or are they talking with their friends about a book that they've read? Just seeing it in other people. Do you have a routine of reading? Not that you need one, but just think about, do you have it? Do you maybe want to start it? Can they lead that routine of reading in your house?
Yeah, we don't. So I have 2 young kids. We don't have a set like right before bedtime. We sit down and read a book. But we definitely have we have a lot of books at our house, but we'll have like a routine where we like kind of cuddle up and all read together. So my kids really enjoy, like taking turns, my husband and I reading to them. And I think just seeing that, like they'll love to do it, but we don't necessarily do it every single night. We might read 7 books in a row one rainy day, but sometimes that takes like me and my husband stopping, taking a minute and doing that with them, because I think sometimes we're in the rush of life and we forget how important it is to like have that community of readers. And I think even with older kids,
yes, start maybe mentioning, like asking the question, hey, what are your friends reading right now? Are your friends reading any books that you're interested in? And maybe get them thinking, oh, let me maybe ask my friend when I see them on a play date or talking on the phone, texting, whatever, what are they interested in reading? That might be a fun, thing to do, is read a book together.
absolutely. I think books catch like wildfire. Once you have someone that's very passionate about a book,
Yeah.
they really can get into that book.
And it does in the classroom. I mean, I see it in first grade when my students bring a book from home. Other kids are interested in what is that book? What are you reading? Do we have it in the library at school? Can I borrow it when you're done? I mean, they ask these questions just in first grade. So it can happen. It does.
It happens a lot. Yeah. And I think maybe if your school, it doesn't seem like that's happening, maybe mention it to your child's teacher and ask her or him, what are kids reading in the class, so you can help get that ball rolling, because that can be just a feat because you're not there all day. We're there all day and see it. Like I think about our current 5th grade class are very into like that Warriors, like cat. It's like a cat fantasy series called Warriors. But I think when I think about the kids that are in that class, there's a few that are very cat obsessed. So it's not surprising to me that is a book that they all want to read.
Yeah.
Or even if you can take the time, I mentioned my mom reading Harry Potter to me, to read a book or the introduction of a book with your child and see if this is a good fit.
For like chapter books, you're saying?
Absolutely. And I think like kind of maybe being a little more flexible and less like you must read 20 minutes every night right before bed.
Yeah.
Which if that works for you, like good, that's fantastic. It doesn't work for my children. I wish it did, but that is our craziest time, is before bed. So I find that just didn't work for me. So I think making it more of an organic routine, I think about cuddling up with a good book on a rainy day.
Right.
And I think my children, when we're like stuck inside during the summer, that's something they go to. So how as a parent can you set up something that is fun?
So we talked about some ideas about making it fun. In the classroom, some things that I've done is like everyone has a flashlight, turn off the lights. You can go anywhere you want in the classroom. So like if you're at home, all right, here's a book light or a flashlight. You can turn off your light in your room. You can get under the covers. You can make a tent and read in the dark.
Yes, that is fun.
Yeah.
Inherently fun.
Right.
I also think another way to do that is to maybe set up a location that is like for reading. Like obviously for me, a window seat that I could read at would be a dream house location, but we don't have that in my house. So like we always read in like the corner of my couch. I have an L-shaped couch, and like that's like a kind of a cut, like I'll sit in the middle and both girls on either side of me. So just thinking about what's like a cozy place that you could set up for your child to have them read that's maybe different than their video game playing area or their movie watching area, just so that then it's like, okay, this place makes me think of reading.
Right. And it's something different. And it's comforting. You know, that's going to, a lot of times when we read, it's to be comforted or to be entertained or, you know, and so we want to create those environments. Yeah. So anything that you can think of, fun things to do with reading. And it doesn't also, we might be moving on and maybe talk about this later. I don't know if I'm adding this, but you can have a conversation about a book that's just like, oh, so tell me about what this book is. And not like, who are the characters? What did they do? Why do you think they did that? It doesn't, you don't have to, you can, and it's lovely if your child is okay with that. But if they are apprehensive about or like, oh, I don't want to answer these questions, they're doing that in school enough that we don't want to make it a chore at home as well.
Absolutely.
With reading.
Yes, I often think some of the things that we do to see if kids comprehend books at school for reluctant readers can kind of turn them off to reading. Like if I am reading for the purpose of creating a scene where the characters are, you know, that like having the main, I don't know, climax of the story, and I've got to make a diorama of that, and that is not my forte. I think that's a shame for kids because we don't want that to be why they're reading. You're reading for pleasure and enjoyment at home, and of course sometimes they're going to be, you know, situations where they do have to read just for school or that.
Yeah.
But I think that creating a separate time where they can read for pleasure is really important. And I think having like organic conversations about the book, which doesn't mean you have to have read it. It could be a book you've never read. You can usually tell, unless it's a true sci-fi crazy book, but you can usually tell if they're catching on to the plot just by what they'll say about the books. We also saw one of our accounts that we follow and have followed for a while, Red Stick Reads. It's a local bookstore. They have a kids book club. So I would venture to believe that they are not the only bookstore, though they are one of the only ones in our area that has one. It's a locally owned bookstore. I think that would be a great way if you have a reluctant reader who is an outgoing kid. Or, I mean, really, maybe if they're shy, this will be their entry into that. But I think I love reading for like the community of it.
Right.
I don't really love just sitting by myself and reading.
No, that's so fun as adults to do it. And so why not let kids do it as well and form a book club?
Yeah.
It doesn't even have to be like a formal, just like I said, getting kids to read the same book and oh, your friend read this, why don't you give it a try and talk about it, and you know, but absolutely look into to see if your area has a children's book club.
Yeah, or just get another reluctant reader friend, have them read the same book, and then like have them talk about it, have them sit down and talk about it, because I think that is, I mean, I know for me, I'm very excited to discuss books that you've read and that we can talk about it. So
yeah,
that is just some starter tips. We have a lot more because this question is, like we said, a loaded question.
Yeah, my brain right now is just like going through all these things and I'm trying to contain it right now. But I think that this is a good start if you're, you know, wondering where do I just start?
Absolutely. So Leah, what is making you turn the page right now? She's laughing because she forgot to prepare for this question.
I just told Alyssa, like, I just love reading. I enjoy it so much, and coming up with like what's making you turn the page now. It's kind of like I'm just going to say, like, I just love reading. I just enjoy it. It's something fun for me to do. And so that's why I keep turning the page right now.
I think for me right now, what I'm currently thinking of is summer weather, summer rainstorms. I love a good book
Yeah.
when it is raining outside. So I'm going to say that because right now it is about to thunderstorm.
Yeah, it's raining and thundering, and we love that. That's definitely one of my favorite things.
Thank you for listening to Turn the Page podcast with Alyssa and Leah. Please take a minute to follow us and leave us a review. We would love to hear from you.
Speaking of hearing from you, we would love for you to follow us on social media. You can find us on Instagram at turnthepage_podcast or Turn the Page Podcast on Facebook.
Bye, y'all.